John was shot and killed in his garden on 24th of June 2015. We've taken hundreds of statements, spoken to lots of people, lots of vehicle inquiries and lots of intelligence work that's been going on in the background to try and progress the investigation. The circumstances surrounding John's murder is that he was at home and he was pottering around the garden at the time of his death. We believe the offender was probably a contract killer, so he was hired by someone else to kill John. We believe he drilled a hole in the fence near to where John was burning some paperwork in a secluded part of the grounds of his house. We also believe that offender jumped the fence and then shot John at close range.
How do you kill a man 6 times and get away with it? 6 gunshots shatter the silence. And nobody noticed. Not the neighbors, not the police, not even the doctors who examined his body. The death certificate read, "Natural causes, a 64-year-old man found dead in his garden with 6 bullets in his body, ruled natural causes." It wasn't until the undertaker began preparing the body for burial that someone finally asked the question, "Wait, are these bullet holes?" By the time police realized they had a murder on their hands, the killer was long gone, evidence compromised, the trail cold. The question isn't just who killed John Palmer. The question is, how did Britain's most notorious criminal mastermind, a man they called Goldfinger, end up shot 6 times in his own garden and certified as dying of natural causes?
John did manage to partially stumble back towards the house, but collapsed there and was pronounced dead at the scene. A number of individuals have stood trial for real estate fraud in Madrid for offences in Tenerife dating back to the 1990s and 2000. John was due to be one of the defendants before he was shot and killed. That trial is really key to this investigation for a number of reasons. Firstly, there was national coverage in the tabloids in the months leading up to John's murder, and the week of his murder he was informed that he was going to be one of those defendants in that trial. Although John has been involved in criminality in his life, no one deserves to die in that manner, regardless of what their background is.
Welcome back to True Crime Page, where we dig beneath the surface of Britain's most dangerous underworld stories. The crimes built on greed, power, and secrets worth killing for. Tonight we step into a case that didn't just end a life. It exposed decades of corruption, unfinished business, and a criminal legacy that refused to die quietly. This is the story of a man who survived the biggest gold robbery in British history, survived prison, enemies, and the law itself, only to be executed in his own garden. It's a story about stolen gold, burned documents, and a murder so precise it left investigators with nothing but questions. A reminder that in the world of organized crime, time doesn't erase deaths, it only delays them. If you're new here, and you're drawn to unfiltered true crime stories that refuse to fade into silence, subscribe, turn on notifications, and join a community committed to uncovering the cases others would rather forget. Let's go back to where it all began.
The UK's most notorious crimes.
Britain's biggest ever robbery. Gold bars worth £30 million are stolen near Heathrow Airport.
Now we know Mossack Fonseca helped in the laundering of proceeds. In 1983, a violent gang attacked security guards at the Brinks Mat warehouse. They escaped with 3 tons of gold.
When were you last down here then?
About 1987, I would think. Long time ago now.
So when you were what?
Former detective Billy Miller's job was to find the money. Some of it had been spent on property, like this place in Kent. The robbers used a Panamanian company set up by Mossack Fonseca. This memo shows they later learned they were working on the proceeds of the famous robbery at Brinks Mat in London.
November 26, 1983, Heathrow Airport. 6 men robbed the Brinks Mat security warehouse. They expect to find $3 million in cash. Instead, they find gold, 3 tons of gold bullion, plus diamonds, plus cash, £26 million worth, the biggest heist in British history. And the robbers had a massive problem. Every single bar was numbered, cataloged, traceable, marked. Try to sell even one bar, and every cop in Britain would be at your door within hours. You can't spend it, can't sell it, can't even move it without drawing attention. 3 tons of gold, utterly worthless, unless you know someone who can make it disappear. They needed someone special, someone with skills most criminals don't have, someone who understood chemistry, metallurgy, and most importantly, someone who knew how to make illegal things look legal. And they found him working out of a small operation in Bristol, a jeweler, a nobody, a man who knew more about gold than almost anyone in Britain. His name was John Palmer, and he saw an opportunity. What Palmer proposed was brilliant and simple. He would melt down the stolen bars, destroy the serial numbers, destroy the stamps, destroy any trace of where they came from. But melting gold wasn't enough. That would still be suspicious. So Palmer mixed the hot gold with legitimate scrap, his own legal gold, blended them together until it was impossible to tell which was which. Then he'd recast it into new bars, different sizes, different weights, different stamps, legal gold. He'd take these new bars to the Bristol Assay Office for official hallmarking. They'd test it, certify it, stamp it as legitimate British gold. And just like that, stolen gold became legal gold. Palmer charged 10% for his services. For laundering 26 million pounds worth of gold, he made 2.6 million in 1980s money, and he was brilliant at it. Week after week, month after month, ton after ton, the stolen Brinks Mat gold flowed through Palmer's hands like water. He turned the untouchable, touchable, the unsellable, sold, the impossible, inevitable. They started calling him Goldfinger, and the name stuck, because just like the Bond villain, John Palmer had figured out how to beat the system. But someone was watching. Neighbors even reported seeing strange crucibles and metalwork. But by the time the police arrived, Palmer had vanished. He had fled to Tenerife, Spain, a country without a full extradition treaty at the time. And when that escape route almost closed, he tried Brazil, only to be turned away at the airport. Eventually, Palmer had no choice but to return to the UK. 1987, 4 years after the robbery. The Old Bailey, London's most famous criminal court. John Palmer stands trial for conspiracy to handle stolen goods. The prosecution's case seems airtight. They have his business records. They have witness testimony. They have documentation showing exactly how much gold passed. Through Scadlin Limited, they can prove Palmer processed 11,000 kilograms of gold scrap in just 2 years. 11,000 kilograms. In a tiny operation. From a man who'd never handled that kind of volume before. The timeline matches perfectly. The quantity matches perfectly. The method matches perfectly. Prosecutors called him the primary gold launderer for the Brinks Mat robbery. Surely this is it. Surely he's going down. Surely no one could look at this evidence and find him innocent. But Palmer's defense was simple. Brilliant, actually. I'm just a businessman. I ask no questions. I buy gold scrap. I melt it. I sell it. What people did before they came to me, not my problem. He admitted processing the gold. He admitted making millions. He just claimed he didn't know it was stolen. Could the prosecution prove Palmer knew? Could they prove he intended to help criminals? In British law, suspicion isn't enough. Probability isn't enough. You need proof beyond reasonable doubt. The jury deliberated for days. When they returned, the courtroom was packed, media everywhere. This was the trial of the decade. The foreman stood. The judge leaned forward. Palmer showed nothing on his face, but his eyes were calculating. Not guilty, The courtroom exploded. Prosecutors furious. Police officers throwing files in disgust. Journalists sprinting for phones. The headlines screamed, "Goldfinger acquitted." Brinks Mat launderer escapes justice. How did he get away with it? And Palmer? Palmer walked out of the Old Bailey a free man, still rich, still untouchable, still Goldfinger. The acquittal didn't just free him, it transformed him. In Britain's criminal underworld, John Palmer became a legend, the man who beat the system, the man who made millions from the biggest robbery in history and walked away clean. Legends are powerful. Legends open doors. Legends make you money. But legends are also dangerous, because legends make enemies. And the Brinks Mat gold was about to prove that it came with a price written in blood. 1990, Brian Robinson, the original gold robber, shot 3 times in the head in southeast London, dead. 1995, Keith Headley, money launderer connected to the gold, shot in his car outside a pub in Canning Town, dead. 1996, 3-fingered Jack McAvoy, alleged gold handler, shot in the head in Marbella, Spain, dead. 1998, Salih Nahom, Palmer's financial advisor, shot 4 times outside his home in North London, dead. Same year, John Fleming, connected to gold distribution, shot in the head in his Vauxhall Frontera, dead. 2001, Donald Urquhart, ran a gold dealership that handled Brinks Mat proceeds, shot dead outside his home in Marylebone, dead. 2003, George Francis, handled gold distribution for the operation, shot outside his courier business in South London, dead. One by one, year after year, the people connected to that gold were dying. 2006, 5 more connected to the operation, murdered. Different methods, different locations, different killers, but always the same connection. Brinks Mat gold. By 2015, more than 20 people connected to the robbery were dead, most murdered. None of the murders solved. The curse wasn't superstition, it was mathematical. Touch the gold, and your chances of dying violently increased exponentially. Some said it was revenge, old scores being settled. Some said it was greed, people killing each other over leftover proceeds. Some said it was silence, people being eliminated before they could talk to police. But whatever the reason, the pattern was clear. Connect yourself to Brinks Mat gold, and you painted a target on your back. And John Palmer had touched more of that gold than almost anyone. He'd made millions from it, built an empire on it, become famous because of it. And as the body count climbed, people started asking, when will Palmer's number come up? Palmer knew about the curse. How could he not? These were his associates, his partners, his friends. He went to their funerals, heard the stories, saw the pattern. He upgraded his security, added cameras, built higher fences, varied his routine. But Palmer had spent decades believing he was special, untouchable, the man who beat the system. He'd walked away from the Old Bailey when everyone said he'd go down, built a criminal empire when most criminals get caught. What do you do when you've beaten the British justice system? You leave Britain, Tenerife, the Canary Islands, paradise. And for John Palmer, it wasn't just an escape, it was a coronation. Palmer didn't just escape justice. He built an empire, private helicopters, oceanfront mansions. He owned resorts, restaurants, nightclubs, golf courses, and the money. The money flowed like water. Every year, millions of tourists flooded into Tenerife. British families, German retirees, Scandinavian couples, all of them dreaming of the same thing, a piece of paradise, a place in the sun, a timeshare, and Palmer was ready to sell them that dream. This paradise was built on lies, and thousands of people were about to lose everything. While Palmer lived like a king, people were defrauded with his Canary Islands. 2001. After years of investigation, British and Spanish authorities finally had enough evidence. John Palmer was arrested on conspiracy to defraud. Once again, the Old Bailey. Once again, Palmer in the dock. But this time his victims were there, watching, waiting. This time the verdict was different. Guilty. Conspiracy to defraud on a massive scale. 8 years in prison. For the victims, finally, justice. Palmer went to prison. The empire seemed to be crumbling. The court ordered confiscation of his assets. Everything he'd stolen should be returned to victims. But Palmer wasn't done fighting. His lawyers filed appeal after appeal. Technical arguments, jurisdictional disputes, procedural challenges. The confiscation proceedings dragged on for years. By the time courts were ready to seize assets, most of it had disappeared. Moved offshore, hidden, in shell companies, protected by legal technicalities. Victims recovered pennies on the pound. Even in prison, Palmer was still winning. 2015. After serving his sentence, Palmer walked free. He walked out with his freedom and most of his money. But 8 years changes a man. And the world had changed too, because while Palmer had been locked up, his former associates had been operating freely. They'd taken over his businesses, made new connections, built new operations. Money that should have been Palmer's was flowing to them. And Palmer was angry, bitter, threatening to expose people. Everyone was nervous. Palmer knew everything. Names, bank accounts, where the bodies were buried, literally. So Palmer returned to England, to his gated property in Essex, to safety, or so he thought, because Palmer had made a lot of enemies along the way. Enemies with long memories, enemies with patience. And Palmer's time was running out. He had 90 days to live. He just didn't know. March 2015. Spanish prosecutors filed new charges: illegal firearms, money laundering, conspiracy. If convicted, Palmer faced decades in Spanish prison. He was 64 years old, health problems, previous heart issues, decades in prison. That was a death sentence. And everyone in Palmer's world knew what that meant. When an old boss faces serious time, people get nervous. Spring became summer. The charges loomed. And in the underworld, a question was being asked. Is Palmer going to talk? Palmer had spent 40 years in organized crime. His contact list read like a who's who of British criminals, connections to Irish gangs, Eastern European networks, Spanish drug cartels, money launderers, hitmen, corrupt officials. Palmer knew everything. If he decided to trade information for a lighter sentence, a lot of people were going down. Would Palmer do it? As spring turned to summer, the whispers grew louder. Some people couldn't take that risk. And so, someone made a decision. South Weald, Essex. Quiet, affluent, safe. Palmer's home had everything. High fences, security cameras, gated entrance. He felt safe here, protected. But someone was watching. June 1st through June 20th. For weeks, someone studied Palmer's movements. The watcher studied the property, the angles, the sight lines. June 23rd, the day before, someone cut a hole in Palmer's fence. Not torn, not smashed, cut deliberately, carefully. Perfect sight line to where Palmer burned his documents every afternoon. The watcher had become the hunter. June 24th, 2015. The trap was set. The killer was in position, and Palmer had no idea this would be his last day alive. 7 a.m., Palmer wakes up. 9:30 a.m., phone calls, business. The Spanish charges weigh on his mind. He's been going through old records, documents, files from decades of operations. Noon, lunch, alone. He often ate alone now. After lunch, his routine. The documents in his office needed disposal. 2:12 p.m., Palmer gathers papers he wants. Destroyed. Old habit from his criminal career. Never leave evidence. Burn what you don't need. But what was on those papers that day? Bank accounts? Names? Proof of crimes? Was Palmer preparing to cooperate with prosecutors? Or was he destroying evidence that could convict him? We'll never know, because those secrets burned with him. 3:15 p.m. Palmer is in his garden now. Papers catch fire. Smoke rises. Ash floats away. 100 feet away, through the fence, someone watches. The assassin has been in position for an hour, waiting, patient. Palmer turns to feed more papers into the fire. 3:28 p.m. The killer squeezes the trigger. Shot 1. Chest. Palmer doesn't understand yet. Heart attack? Pain explodes in his chest. Shot 2. Abdomen. He's falling now, trying to run, but his body won't respond. Shot 3. Right arm. Survival instinct kicks in. He tries to crawl, back to the house, to safety, to help. Shot 4. Left elbow. He can't move his arms now. Can't crawl. Can't fight. Shot 5. Back. He's dying now. Knows it. Feels it. 40 years of crime, countless enemies. And finally, someone caught up with him. Shot 6. Kidneys. 3:30 p.m. John Palmer is dead. The documents keep burning. The birds keep singing. The neighborhood stays quiet. The killer moves calmly through the fence, collects shell casings, disappears into the wooded area beyond. Minutes pass, then an hour. Nobody checks on Palmer. Nobody heard the shots. Nobody suspects anything. 6:30 p.m. Palmer's family arrives home and finds him in the garden. The ambulance emergency call came at 6:34 p.m. First responders arrived within minutes. Paramedics examined Palmer, 64 years old, known heart problems, previous surgeries. His chest was covered in scars, old sternotomy from previous heart surgery, recent surgical wounds. In the fading light to exhausted paramedics, the bullet wounds looked like more surgical scars. Police officer on scene. Family mentioned Palmer's recent health problems. Heart issues. Just out of hospital. It all made sense. Elderly man, heart problems. Found dead in garden. The police called it in. Sudden death, likely natural causes. Doctor would need to certify. Doctor arrived. Brief examination. Medical history reviewed. Heart problems confirmed. Cause of death, natural causes. Likely cardiac arrest. Palmer's body was released to funeral home, not to the coroner. No autopsy ordered. For 4 days, Palmer's murder was classified as natural death. For 4 days, the killer's trail went cold. For 4 days, Palmer's family planned a funeral. June 29th. The undertaker began preparing Palmer's body for burial and noticed something wrong. These weren't surgical scars. These were entry wounds. He called the police. I think this man was shot. Police arrived. Emergency examination. X-rays revealed the truth. 6 bullets, still in the body. Panic, confusion. A murder had been misclassified. 4 days had been lost. Essex Police Major Crime Unit was called in. Murder investigation launched, but the crime scene had been unsealed for 4 days. Rain had fallen, evidence washed away. Family and friends had walked through it, contaminating everything. Whatever Palmer had been burning was now just ash, blown away by wind. Forensics teams arrived 4 days too late. No shell casings found. The killer had been meticulous. CCTV cameras on Palmer's property? None captured the murder. The killer had known the blind spots. Neighbors interviewed. Nobody heard shots. Nobody saw anything. Detective Inspector Paul Considine led the investigation. He later said, "This was one of the most frustrating cases of my career. We knew it was murder. We knew it was professional. But every lead went nowhere. The perfect murder had just gotten a lot more perfect. Police knew more than they could ever prove. And yet, they still appealed to the public. Someone knows something. Someone always knows. But in Palmer's world, talking came with a price, and that price was death. Then came a breakthrough, not in 2015, but a decade later. Documentary dug deeper, and a name emerged from the shadows. The butcher, Imre Arakas, a Lithuanian hitman infamous for professional cold-blooded killings, and travel records suggested he was in the UK at the time. Is this the man? But naming a suspect and proving it in a court of law are two very different things. And so, the walls of silence stayed for now. John Palmer's killer is still out there, and someone watching this right now knows something. Could it be you? Do you know who killed Goldfinger? If you have any information, contact Essex Police today. And if you want more unsolved true crime cases like this, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because someone out there holds the missing piece.